most of you have been involved in this in some way or another, but there are some new faces, and it takes the experienced and the new energy together to be as successful as we can in this process. My charge here is to tell you an update from the city and what the City of Marina is going to do from this point forward. Just like the public, we have a deadline of April 19th to get our comments in regarding the document called the Final Environmental Impact Report. So our city and our paid consultants are working together to prepare those comments. As you know, it's a very large document with very little time to review, to be able to provide substantive comments. So we're doing the best we can. Fortunately, there's very little change between the final and the draft that preceded it. So our comments, which we sent in on the draft environmental impact statement report, weren't really very well addressed in the final, and so many of our final comments will resemble our draft comments. But that's step number one. Every step of the way we have to be as engaged as possible, but our overall goal is to protect the sacred water for the City of Marina and those who drink from it on Fort Ord and in the central part of Marina. Every community has to have good water for a good quality of life. So it's our lifeline. There's nothing more sacred as far as a natural resource than the water that we drink and the air that we breathe. So we're going to do everything we can, but it starts with the FEIR comments. Then, in approximately June timeframe, there'll be a draft certificate of public convenience and necessity, a CPCN, from the Public Utility Company, the California Public Utilities Commission. So we need to be, as a city, engaged in that process. And then in the September to December 2018 timeframe, there'll be a final certificate of public convenience and necessity, a final CPCN from the California Public Utilities Commission. So we need to be involved in that process. If they issue a CPCN to allow CalAm to do what is proposed, then the city has to look at that permission and see if it is something that we need to challenge in court. If it will threaten our sacred water, then we will challenge it in court. Of course, we will do everything we can to protect our sacred water, as every community would do if they were in our position. In this multi-step process that I just mentioned that's coming up this year at the California Public Utilities realm, we will be fighting for environmental justice. The City of Marina household income is 8% less than the Monterey County household income. We are not the most affluent community in Monterey County, but we are a very special community to be part of. And we do not think that if the roles are reversed and Marina was insisting somewhere in the CalAm service area, Monterey, PG, Seaside area, that we had to put our slant wells on their beaches because we have a water issue, and we were very sorry that they would not get a drop of that water, and we were very sorry that virtually the entire brunt of all of the adverse impacts would be borne by them, that they would probably not like that idea very much. And the environmental justice poster child is represented by communities like ours across the nation, across the world, that are saddled with harmful industrial facilities to serve more affluent communities outside of these less affluent communities. So when everyone thought it was a great idea to put the regional sewage treatment plant in the Marina area, and a great idea to do the same with the regional landfill, and a great idea to close the other 4 sand mining plants in our peninsula area, but leave Marina's sand mining plant to serve the region with sand as the last remaining coastal sand mining plant in the United States. That was great for everybody to shift the burden of those industrial facilities onto Marina. Great, it's a win-win for everybody else outside of Marina. We didn't like the idea that we had lost 75 acres of our land within our city limits due to the erosion caused by the sand mining plant. We wanted that to stop. We spent somewhere around $300,000 or $400,000 toward the closure of the CEMEX sand mining plant and trying to respect as much as possible the workers there so that they have about a 6-year period before the workers will no longer be there. And instead of the workers sand mining, there'll be 3 years of reclamation of the damage done that's still left on the land that has not yet washed into the ocean near the sand mining plant. All toward the goal of restoring, reclaiming the natural habitat of the CEMEX property where for the last 106 years or so there's been a sand mining plant. So that finally Marina took a big step to fight a gigantic mega corporation so that we could have our coastal dunes back, we could help all the other cities whose erosion of their beaches had increased due to the same sand mining plant in Marina. So everyone benefited by Marina, the State Lands Commission, the Coastal Commission, Save Our Shores, surf riders, and a lot of private citizens, Sustainable Seaside, Citizens for Sustainable Marina, everyone bound together to close the CEMEX land plant so it could be protected in perpetuity for its natural values and its protection of our resistance against flooding, etc. Those dunes are very important in a lot of ways, and they're important for all of us from the Salinas River south. So, great, celebrate. We did a great thing with a great team. The footnote is that instead of having a property to restore for the benefit of future generations so they can see what endangered species habitat is and what it's like when people band together to protect endangered species and habitat, the footnote is that we're faced with yet another industrial facility to serve the region but not to serve us with one drop of water. The insult to injury that was mentioned by Keith is that any water that has to be returned will be returned to Castroville, north of the Salinas River. So, you put all that together, this is a classic environmental injustice. And so, what the city will be doing will be stressing this point in every one of these steps coming forward. We also will be stressing that, as Keith mentioned, and I think Gail mentioned as well, that if the battle of science is won because CPUC, being a utility company commission, looks down the straw and sees the CalAmp science will result in a new public utility, they're going to like that science because that's what they do. Just like the FAA, when they look down a straw and they see an airplane, they're happy. If they see something else besides an airplane, they don't really want that near an airport. So the CPUC is a public utility company. It's in the business of approving utilities. So we will be constantly telling them that there is no mitigation for harm done to Marina's groundwater. That CalAmp will not make us whole. CalAmp refuses to make us whole because they can't afford to make us whole. They can't probably afford this project the way it's going if it doesn't cause harm. You saw the financial numbers. If it does cause harm, CalAmp cannot afford and will not pay tens of millions of dollars on a regular basis to fix our contaminated groundwater caused by their profit-seeking measure. Instead, they'll do their best to make us whole, perhaps, by trucking in water or some other cheap alternative. But any community that exists today using good quality groundwater would not want to see that change to trucked in water or some other outside water provided to you that doesn't come out of your tap, but somehow it comes to you in some other way. What kind of a future, what kind of reputation, what kind of a quality of life would that be in the City of Marina and the Ord community as compared to what we have now? So if you read the draft EIR or that final EIR that's out now, it does not state in the mitigation what will happen if our groundwater is contaminated by this project. And there's a battle of science, and it's not unusual to have one side saying the science defends their interest, and the other side says the science defends their interest. So we have that going on here today. But it's our water, that's the only water that's going to be at risk from this project. No one else's water. So we will be keeping that in mind. And the last thing I want to mention is the Western Snowy Plover has some disappointing news in that since the slant well went in, the test slant well, the Western Snowy Plovers, which is the city mascot, those nests and those reproductive outputs have been plummeting since the test slant well went in Marina, differently, a higher decrease than the rest of the Monterey area south of us, where those plovers are not doing nearly as bad as the Marina plovers. It's not hard to see that the noise, the vibrations, the construction, the trucks, the maintenance of a well inside their habitat might not be what a sensitive bird would want. It might move away while that's all going on. That's one test slant well. That's going to be turned into a production well. It'll stay where it's at. It'll be maintained. It'll have a road going to it. And there'll be 7 to 10 others, or 6 to 10 others, 6 to 9 others. So we'll be focused on that as well, because the snowy plover has no voice in this process unless we give it a voice. And our citizens in Marina are very busy working multiple jobs. Most of them do not have a voice in this project either, unless they're here tonight or hearing about what's going on tonight and do what I hope that you all do, write some simple comments so that the public can be heard at the public utility process. And for the rest of the Marina, who does not have a voice because they're too busy working, may not even understand English, or can't understand what we're talking about tonight because they haven't spent more than 2 minutes trying to understand it, we are their voice. You are their voice. So together, let's make our voice as strong as possible, and the City of Marina will be behind you every step of the way, even though this may become $1 million or more price tag. Much more expensive than the CEMEX plant. But it's sacred to us, and I'd like to thank our city manager who stepped in, Lane Long. He has had his life and his job trying to run the city hijacked by the CalAm process because it's so complicated, so expensive, and so all-time consuming that many things in our city are no longer getting done that the citizens have been wanting to have done for a long time. But I just want to say that he often is here past midnight in his office working alone with stacks of paper surrounding him, and CalAm is a big reason why. Before that it was CEMEX, and there are other things that are not getting done while we try to stop the profit motive from taking over our public resource and our future water supply. Thank you.